Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. The first time I understood the evacuation was over, it wasn't because of the news. It was because the highway stopped behaving like a highway. Interstate 95 is supposed to be movement. Lanes, speed, exits like clockwork. That morning it turned into a long, silent parking lot under a low gray sky, every vehicle pointed south like a flock that had lost its leader. I was in my work van, a white Ford with my name and phone number on the side, stuffed with tools because that's how I lived. I did maintenance contracting, small commercial stuff mostly. Doors, locks, minor electrical, emergency lighting, whatever was broken that day. The kind of work where you learn to solve problems with what you have because no one wants to pay for a second trip. My phone had been chirping alerts since before sunrise. The governor's message, the county message, the Department of Transportation message about restricted access and emergency response routes. Every alert was heavy on careful language, light on specifics. Public safety. Shelter in place if you cannot travel. Avoid contact with aggressive individuals. Aggressive individuals. That was the phrase they kept using. I'd already seen what they meant. At a red light outside Baltimore, a man in a stained dress shirt had walked into the intersection like he couldn't hear the horns. He moved wrong. Too slow in the body, too fast in the eyes. A woman leaned out her window and yelled at him, and he turned his head in a way that made my stomach tighten, like a dog hearing food hit a bowl. Then he ran. Not a sprint like a healthy runner, more like a full-body lunge, arms flailing, feet slapping, almost falling, but never quite. He hit her driver's side door hard enough to dent it. Her scream cut through the traffic like a blade. People were already swerving. Somebody clipped a curb. Another car bumped a bumper and set off a chain reaction of honks. I didn't stay to see the outcome. I took the right turn as soon as my lane opened and drove like my heart was trying to climb out of my throat. By the time I got to Interstate 95, the plan in my head had changed from get south to get away from people. The evacuation was funneling everyone into the same lanes, the same exits, the same choke points. If anything went wrong there, it would go wrong for everyone at once. And something did. It started as brake lights ahead, then idling, then nothing. I killed the van's engine and listened. No sirens, no helicopters, no steady low roar of flowing traffic. Just a few distant car alarms, thin and intermittent, as if someone was tapping the world with a fingernail. The air smelled like hot asphalt and exhaust. It was humid enough that my shirt clung to my back. The clouds were low, pressing down on the tree line that boxed the highway in. I got out and walked forward along the shoulder. The scene ahead looked like a photograph of a disaster that hadn't decided what kind of disaster it was yet. Cars were stopped at weird angles. Doors were open. A few people stood on the median, waving their arms like they were trying to flag down help that wasn't coming. Farther ahead, maybe half a mile, I could just make out a cluster of vehicles piled in a way that suggested impact. I walked back to my van and pulled a notebook from the glove box because I needed something, anything, that still lived in the world where problems had lists and solutions had steps. I wrote down 3 things: water, shelter, separation. Then I looked at the exit sign up ahead. Maryland House, Travel Plaza. 2 miles. The Travel Plaza was a name I knew like a landmark you don't think about until you need a bathroom. It sat right off the highway in Harford County, a big rest stop with restrooms, vending, seating, food counters, and a building that had always seemed too large for how quickly people passed through it. a place meant for short stops, not long survival. But it had walls, it had doors, it had water lines and toilets and sinks, it had a maintenance wing and a loading area. If it was built like every other highway facility I'd ever worked around, it had a chance. I got back in my van and drove on the shoulder at a crawl, carefully weaving around stranded cars. People shouted sometimes. Most didn't. Some tried to wave me down. I kept my eyes forward and my hands tight on the wheel, feeling guilty and also feeling like guilt was a luxury I couldn't afford. When I reached the off-ramp to the travel plaza, it was clogged with vehicles that had tried to escape the stalled interstate and given up halfway. I couldn't drive through it. I parked on the shoulder, grabbed a backpack and started walking. I had a basic setup: work gloves, flashlight, a folding utility knife, a small first aid kit, a water bottle I'd filled that morning, a crowbar because I'd used it to pop an old steel door the day before and never bothered to put it away, a bright orange safety vest, a roll of duct tape, a multi-tool, a lighter. In my pocket, a set of keys that opened nothing useful in the world outside my van. As I walked up the ramp, the air changed. Less exhaust, more damp earth and cut grass. The tree line rose on both sides and the noise from the interstate dulled behind me. Halfway up, I saw the first sign that the rest area wasn't untouched. A suitcase lay open near the guardrail, clothes spilling out like someone had shaken it. Beside it, a phone was face down in the weeds, its screen cracked. No blood, no bodies, just abandonment in a way that made my brain itch. At the top of the ramp, the travel plaza opened into a big parking lot with painted lines, light poles, and islands of stunted landscaping. The main building sat in the middle, a long rectangle of tan brick and dark glass with a high roof line. I could see the familiar shapes, restroom signs, vending machines near the entrance, a set of double doors that probably had automatic openers. Everything looked normal, and that was the worst part. Normal meant the danger could be anywhere. I didn't walk straight in. I stayed along the edge of the lot, using the line of parked cars as cover. I listened. I watched. There were people inside. I could tell because I saw movement behind the glass, shadows shifting in the seating area. I also saw movement outside. Near the far end of the lot, by a row of trash cans and a maintenance shed, something moved between vehicles. Low, jerky, like someone ducking and trying not to be seen. My mouth went dry. I crouched behind a dark pickup truck and waited. The figure stepped out into the open and I saw enough to know it wasn't a person trying to be cautious. It was a man in a torn hoodie, and the way he walked was wrong, in the same way the man at the intersection had been wrong. His head twitched as if he was following sounds I couldn't hear. His arms were held slightly away from his body, fingers curled. He turned his head toward the building and stopped, as if listening. Then he moved again, faster, with that same lunge run, and disappeared behind a van. I didn't chase, I didn't yell, I didn't do anything brave or heroic. I waited until my breathing slowed, and then I backed away from the open lot and moved toward the building side, staying close to the brick wall where the windows were smaller. There was a service corridor door on the side, the kind that employees use to take out trash or access mechanical rooms. I'd seen 100 doors like it. Steel, with a push bar on the inside and a lock cylinder on the outside. The metal was scuffed near the handle, and the paint at the bottom was scraped, showing that carts had bumped it for years. The door was closed. Good. That meant it might be locked. Locked meant fewer people had been going in and out. I tested the handle gently. Locked. I crouched, looked at the lock, and did what my job had trained me to do, treat it like a problem. Not a moral dilemma, not a crime, a piece of hardware. The lock cylinder was a standard commercial type. I didn't have a key, I didn't have a pick set. I had a crowbar and a bad feeling about the parking lot. I walked down the side of the building until I found a loading area, an inset with a roll-up door and a metal dock plate. There was a chain-link gate across the driveway, and it was secured with a padlock that looked like it had been cut before and replaced. Someone had already tried to get into the service side. I didn't like that. I backed away and kept going, following the building's perimeter. In the rear, tucked between two brick protrusions, I found something better. A vented metal door with a small sign that said electrical room. The sign was faded but readable. There was no window, the handle was a lever type, and the lock cylinder was older. I tested it. It opened. The smell hit me first. Not rot, not anything dramatic, just warm, stale air and dust, like an enclosed space that had been running equipment and then stopped. I slipped inside and pulled the door shut behind me, leaving it unlatched in case I needed to move fast. The electrical room was narrow and lit by a single emergency light that glowed a weak green. Panels lined one wall, breakers, disconnect switches, labeled circuits. I read them automatically because my brain needed to hold on to something familiar. Lighting lobby, HVAC Unit 1, vending west, restrooms men, restrooms women, water heater. The main power was on, at least partially. That meant the building still had electricity, either from the grid or from a generator. I didn't hear a generator, so I assumed grid, for now. There was another door at the far end of the room, also unmarked. I eased it open and found myself in a maintenance corridor. It was the kind of corridor the public never sees. Painted cinder block, concrete floor, pipes and conduit running overhead. The air was cooler here. The building's hum was present but subdued, like a giant creature breathing shallowly. I moved slowly, listening. Somewhere ahead, I heard voices. I followed the corridor until I reached a junction where a small window looked out into the main lobby area through a service hatch. Through the glass, I saw about a dozen people gathered near the seating. Some were sitting, some were standing, a few had bags. One man had a suitcase. A woman held a toddler on her hip, rocking slightly. A teenage boy paced, hands in his hair. They looked like a snapshot of a day gone wrong. And then I saw the tension layered underneath. Two men stood near the main entrance doors like they were guarding them. One had a metal tire iron in his hand. The other had a long black flashlight held like a club. They weren't employees. They had that look, jaw set, shoulders squared, that said they'd decided to be in charge because no one else was. A woman near the vending machines was arguing with someone, pointing at the snack spiral like it was a moral issue. Another person was trying to pry open a machine with a knife, failing. I didn't want to walk into that group. Crowds were unpredictable even on a good day. On a bad day, crowds turned into storms. I backed away and continued down the corridor. In the maintenance wing, I found a janitor's closet. I found a mop sink. I found shelves with cleaning supplies, paper towels, trash bags, and a box of nitrile gloves. I took the gloves and the trash bags. I didn't think about it. My hands moved like they were on autopilot. I found a small break room with a coffee machine and a half-empty case of bottled water under a table. I took 4 bottles and stuffed them into my backpack. Then I found the door to the outside in the back near the dumpsters, and I listened before opening it. Silence. I pushed the door open and stepped into the service yard. The dumpsters were full. There were scattered cups and wrappers. The smell was stronger here, sour and sweet in the way trash gets when it sits in heat. The yard was fenced on 3 sides with a chain-link fence, and the 4th side was the building itself. It was a trap if something got inside, but it was also a controlled space. I closed the door and finally latched it behind me. I was inside the building, but not inside the crowd. That was when the first hard choice landed. If I stayed in the maintenance wing, I could hide. I could drink the bottled water I'd taken. I could eat vending machine food if I found a way to access it. I could wait. But waiting was how people got surprised. Waiting was how you ran out of water and then had to move when you were weakest. Waiting was what you did when you didn't have a plan. I needed the building to be secure, not perfect, just better than an open parking lot. I needed separation. I walked back through the corridor to the electrical room and checked the door to the outside again. It had a solid steel frame. Good. I checked the hinges. They were on the inside. Better. I checked if there was a way to brace it. There was a fire extinguisher mount nearby and a metal trash can. I pulled the trash can and wedged it under the handle at an angle, so if the door was forced, it would bind. Not a fortress, but a delay. Then I went looking for the maintenance office. I found it near the corridor junction. A small room with a desk, a chair, and a wall-mounted board with keys hanging on hooks. Some hooks were empty. Some keys were still there. My heart actually jumped. Key tags labeled restrooms, electrical, storage, roof access, vending. Vending. I grabbed the vending key ring and clipped it to my belt. I also grabbed the roof access key because the roof is always information. Sight lines, vents, potential escape routes. Then I sat in the chair for exactly 10 seconds because my legs were shaking, and my brain needed to accept that I'd just become the kind of person who takes keys off a wall in an emergency. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a thief who was trying not to die. When I stood up, I heard a new sound. A thud. Then another. From the lobby side. Something heavy had hit the glass. I moved down the corridor towards the service hatch window and looked. The crowd had shifted. People were standing now, pressed back from the entrance doors. The two men with the tire iron and flashlight were closer to the doors, bodies angled like they were bracing. And through the glass of the entrance I saw a figure slam against it from outside. Once, twice, a third time. The glass didn't break, but it flexed. The figure outside was a woman in a gray jacket, hair matted, face smeared with dirt. She was moving wrong, head jerking, mouth open. She wasn't pleading. She was just hitting again and again, as if the door was a simple obstacle like a fence gate. A man inside shouted, "Don't open it!" Someone else shouted, "That's my sister!" The arguing started instantly, like a fuse. I watched, and I felt my own chest tighten because I knew what this moment meant. It wasn't just about one person outside, it was about the rules of the building. If they opened the door, they risked letting in something dangerous. If they didn't, they risked becoming the kind of people who leave others outside. I didn't have the luxury of that argument. I wasn't in the lobby. I wasn't part of their crowd. But I was in the building. And if the entrance doors failed, it would become everyone's problem, including mine. I left the hatch and moved fast, quietly, through the maintenance corridors until I found a point that opened near the lobby in a staff-only hallway. There was a door with a small window that looked into the lobby. I opened it just a crack and listened. The arguing had escalated. The man who'd shouted about his sister was pushing toward the door. The two self-appointed guards were blocking him. People were yelling over each other. The toddler was crying. And then the entrance glass took another hard hit. I stepped out into the lobby. Heads snapped toward me immediately. A dozen pairs of eyes. Fear, suspicion, relief, irritation, the human mix. I held my hands up. "I'm not here to start anything," I said. My voice sounded rough, like I hadn't spoken all day. I came in through the service side. Someone said, "How?" "I work maintenance," I said, which was both true and an explanation that made sense to people in a place like this. There are back corridors. The two men by the entrance shifted their weight. The one with the tire iron eyed the crowbar on my belt. "You alone?" he asked. "For now," I said. Another slam from outside. The man with the sister, his eyes were bright with panic, said, "Open it, that's her." The woman outside hit the glass again, forehead and palms, and left a smear. I forced my brain to stay calm. "Listen," I said, louder now. "That door is designed to keep weather out and people moving in a normal day. It's not designed to take repeated impacts forever. If it breaks, you won't get to choose what comes in." The tire iron man snorted. "And you know that how?" "Because I've replaced doors," I said. "And because I'm looking at the frame and seeing flex." The sister man looked like he might swing at me. I kept my distance. A woman near the seating, late 30s, hair pulled back, wearing a school sweatshirt, said, "What do you want us to do then?" That was the first reasonable question I'd heard. I pointed toward the side hallway I'd come from. There are service corridors, maintenance rooms, doors you can lock from the inside. I can secure parts of this building, but not if we're all standing here watching the front door like it's a show. A teen, maybe 16, said, "You're saying we should hide?" "I'm saying we should control access," I said. "This place has multiple entrances. If we don't decide how people move in and out, someone else will decide for us." The tire iron man lifted his chin. "We're already deciding." I looked at him carefully. "You're guarding a glass door with a tire iron," I said. "That's not a plan, that's a reaction." His eyes narrowed. The flashlight man shifted like he might step closer. I didn't back down, but I also didn't escalate. I pointed to the vending machines. "There's food in those. Water in the pipes, toilets. But none of it matters if we can't keep the building from becoming a hallway anyone can walk through." A man in a business jacket, cleaner than he should have been, said, "We can't just lock ourselves in forever. We need to get moving." "Where?" I asked, and it came out sharper than I intended. "The interstate is jammed. The ramp is blocked. If you have a better destination, say it. Otherwise, this is a shelter, whether you like it or not." He had no answer. His mouth opened and closed. Another slam against the door. The glass held, but the sound was like a drumbeat urging panic. The sister man made a sudden move toward the entrance and the tire iron man shoved him back. The sister man stumbled, hit a chair, and someone screamed. It was unraveling. I took a step forward and raised my voice. "Stop!" The word cut through the noise enough that a few people froze. "Look at me. Listen. That person outside is not behaving like a person who needs help. If you open that door, you will be dealing with more than one problem." The sister man's face twisted. "You don't know her." I met his eyes. "I don't need to," I said. "I've seen it already. Aggressive, unresponsive, moving wrong. That's what the alerts were about." The woman outside slammed again, and this time the top corner of the glass spittered slightly. Not a full crack, just a line, like a warning. The crowd collectively inhaled. That was enough to tip the decision. The tire iron man shouted, "Back! Everyone back from the door!" People moved, scrambling towards the seating area. I turned toward the side hallway. "There's a rolling security gate," I said, guessing based on the building layout and the fact that many travel plazas had them for closing food courts. Or a secondary set of interior doors. We can create layers. The school sweatshirt woman said, "Who are you?" My name felt small and personal in that moment, but I gave it anyway. "Mark," I said. "Mark Heller." She nodded, as if filing it away. "I'm Renee," she said. "I teach elementary school. This is not..." She stopped, swallowed. "What do you need?" Her question anchored me. I pointed at the teen. "You, what's your name?" He blinked. "Eli." "Eli, you're going to help me find the interior doors and close them," I said. I looked at another man, older, wearing a baseball cap and carrying a tool bag that looked like it had real weight. "You got tools?" He lifted the bag slightly. "I'm Frank," he said, "plumber." "Frank, you're with me," I said. "We need to secure water access and make sure nobody floods the place or shuts it off by accident." Renee looked at the toddler. "I'm not leaving her," she said. "Don't," I said. "Stay with the group. Keep people calm." The tire iron man stepped toward me. "Hold on. You don't get to give orders." I looked at him and then at the cracked glass. "Then you give them," I said. "Because right now, the door is." He hesitated. The flashlight man looked uncertain. Finally, the tire iron man said, "Name's Daryl." He said it like a challenge. "And I'm not letting strangers run this place." "I'm not running it," I said. "I'm trying to keep it from becoming a trap." A new sound cut through the lobby. A high-pitched alarm like a door alarm. The entrance glass flexed again. Eli's eyes widened. "It's going to break." "Then move," I said. Eli and I sprinted down the side hallway toward the food court area. There was, in fact, a rolling gate. Metal slats that could be pulled down. It was half open, stuck. The motor wasn't running. No power or jammed. "Help me," I said, and we grabbed the bottom and pulled. It resisted, then moved with a grinding squeal. We got it down halfway, then it jammed again. I crouched, looked at the track. Something was wedged, maybe debris, maybe a bent bracket. I pulled my multi-tool, used the pliers to yank out a crumpled piece of aluminum. The gate dropped another foot. Eli strained. "It's heavy." "It's supposed to be," I said through clenched teeth. "That's the point." We got it down to about chest height, and it stuck hard, refusing to budge further. "Good enough," I said. "It's a barrier, not perfect." We ran back toward the lobby. The entrance glass was now visibly cracked, a web spreading from the corner. The woman outside had smacked it so many times her sleeve was torn, but she didn't slow. People inside were pressed back, some crying, some yelling. Frank appeared near the restrooms, already moving with purpose, like this was a job site and chaos was just noise. He nodded once at me, as if to say he understood. I shouted, "Everyone behind the gate, move." Renee grabbed the toddler and started herding people toward the food court. Daryl and the flashlight man tried to keep order, but panic doesn't take instructions well. It takes exits. Then the glass failed. It wasn't a dramatic explosion. It was a sudden collapse, like the door had been tired of holding and finally quit. The top corner caved inward, and the woman outside slipped through the opening like water finding a crack. She hit the floor on her hands and knees, then snapped up and lunged at the nearest person. The person screamed and stumbled back. People surged. Daryl swung the tire iron, not to hit her in the head, not like in movies, but like he was trying to block her, to keep her at arm's length. The flashlight man jabbed with his light, trying to push her away. I didn't watch long. I grabbed Eli by the shoulder and shoved him toward the gate. "Go!" We ran, and the crowd surged behind us. We ducked under the half-lowered gate and pulled it as low as it would go. People crawled under, crying, scrambling, dragging bags. Someone got stuck and yelled. Eli and I hauled them through. Then we were inside the food court area, behind a barrier that was too high to crawl under easily and too low to stand behind comfortably. It was a choke point. On the other side, the lobby was chaos. The woman moved with that wrong lunge, grabbing, clawing, not speaking. Another figure appeared at the broken door, drawn by noise. Then another. My stomach dropped. The rest area was a place everyone knew existed. a beacon on a highway, a stopping point, and now it was a funnel. I scanned the food court area, looking for something better than a half-stuck gate. There was a staff door behind one of the counters. Probably led to the same service corridors I'd used. I ran to it and tried the handle. Locked. I yanked the vending key ring off my belt and tried a key at random because in that moment, randomness was faster than thought. The first key didn't fit, the second did. The door opened into a narrow corridor that smelled like fryer oil and cleaning chemicals. It connected to the maintenance halls. I held the door and shouted, "Back here, staff corridor, move." Renee saw me and moved immediately, dragging the toddler and pulling 2 others with her. Frank was already coming, carrying a stack of bottled water and a box of paper towels like he'd raided a supply closet in passing. People funneled toward the door, some hesitating, some afraid of moving into unknown hallways. "Go!" I shouted, and my voice cracked. "This is the only way out that isn't a parking lot." Daryl appeared at the gate, sweat on his forehead, tire iron raised, eyes wide. "Where are you going?" "Service side," I said. "Corridors, rooms we can lock." He looked at the lobby and the growing movement near the broken entrance, and for the first time his confidence wavered. "You better not be leading us into a dead end." "I came in that way," I said. "It's not a dead end." He nodded once, then shouted at the flashlight man, "Tom, get over here." Tom, apparently that was his name, joined him, and they started herding the last of the group toward the staff corridor. Then something slammed against the gate. The metal slats rattled. A hand, dirty, trembling, reached under the bottom edge, fingers grasping, trying to pull. Someone screamed. We moved faster. We got everyone through the staff door and into the service corridor. I shut the door behind us and locked it, then looked for a way to brace it. There was a wheeled cart nearby. I rolled it against the door and jammed the wheels sideways. Not perfect, better. The corridor opened into the central maintenance hallway, and I felt a strange relief. The utilitarian world made sense. Pipes ran in straight lines. Doors had labels. Lights hummed. The building had structure, and structure meant there were options. People leaned against the walls, panting. The toddler had stopped crying and was now staring with wide, silent eyes. Renee looked at me. "What now?" I took a breath and forced myself to speak like I was on a job site explaining a plan. "Now we secure the service wing," I said. "We pick a space with one entrance, ideally with access to water and a secondary exit. We control noise, we ration food. We treat this like a building that can be defended." Daryl wiped his face with his sleeve. "And what about them?" He jerked his head toward the lobby side. "We don't go back there," I said. "Not until we have a way to do it safely." Frank set down the water and looked at the pipes overhead. "Water's municipal," he said, already thinking like a plumber. "If pressure drops, toilets stop. If power goes, pumps might go depending on how it's set up." "Power's on for now," I said, "but we can't assume it stays." Eli sat on the floor shaking. "How many are out there?" "I saw at least one in the lot," I said. "And now we've drawn more. This place is going to attract people. Some will be like us, some won't." Renee swallowed hard. "This is a rest stop." "Not anymore," I said. I led them deeper into the maintenance wing, past the electrical room, toward a storage area I'd seen. It was a large janitorial and supply room with shelving and a single heavy door. Inside were cases of paper products, cleaning chemicals, spare fixtures, a ladder, and a small rolling tool cabinet. It was a room meant for supplies, not people, but it had something precious, a door that wasn't glass. We got everyone inside and shut it. I used the ladder laid horizontally and jammed under the door handle with the tool cabinet pressed against it. It created a crude brace. Then, for the first time since the highway had gone silent, I allowed myself to feel the weight of what I'd done. I had chosen this place. I had chosen to fortify a building that everyone knew existed. A building with a parking lot full of abandoned cars. A building with signs on the interstate pointing right at it. I wasn't hiding in the woods. I wasn't disappearing into some unknown corner of the map. I had planted myself in a crossroads. And crossroads always bring travelers. The group settled into a rough silence. People sat on the floor between shelves of paper towels and toilet paper. Someone prayed quietly. Someone else stared at their phone as if the signal might return out of sheer will. I opened my backpack and counted what I had. Water bottles, the first aid kit, the flashlight, duct tape, gloves, the key ring. Keys were power now. Not metaphorical power, literal access. Renee came over quietly. "Mark," she said, "you seem like you've thought about this." I almost laughed, but nothing about the day felt like a joke. "I've thought about building problems," I said, "not this." She nodded toward the toddler. "My sister was supposed to pick us up," she said. She said the roads were clear, then she stopped answering. I didn't offer false comfort. "I'm sorry," I said. Daryl sat nearby listening. Jaw clenched. Tom leaned against the wall, flashlight on his lap, eyes darting. Frank opened a cabinet and pulled out a small wrench set. "We need to find the main water shutoff," he said. "If someone panics and starts flooding toilets, or if the lines break, we need control." I nodded. "And I need roof access," I said. "We need to see what's happening outside." Daryl looked up. "Roof?" he repeated. "Sightlines," I said. "We can't defend what we can't see." He hesitated. "And if there are people out there, normal people, then we decide what kind of people we are," I said. "But we decide from a position where we don't get rushed." The air in the storage room was warm, and the smell of paper and cleaning supplies was strangely comforting. It reminded me of normal work days, of inventory rooms and supply closets where the biggest crisis was running out of hand soap. Now, the crisis was the world. I stood and clipped the roof access key to my belt. "Eli," I said, "you're with me." His eyes widened. "Why me?" "Because you're fast," I said. "And because if you're going to stay here, you need to know the building. Knowledge is safety." He swallowed and nodded. Daryl stood too. "I'm coming." I looked at him. "Fine," I said. "But you do what I say on the roof. No shouting, no hero stuff. We go up, we look, we come back." He didn't like being told, but he nodded. We slipped out of the storage room and into the corridor, moving quietly. The building's noises were different now. The lobby side was louder. Distant banging, occasional muffled screams that made my skin crawl. The service side was quieter, but not silent. The air ducts carried sound in weird ways. A single slam could echo like a warning. We found the roof access door at the end of a corridor. It was steel, with a push bar and a sign that said, "Roof access alarmed." The alarm wasn't currently sounding, which told me either the system wasn't working or someone had already opened it earlier. I used the key. The lock turned smoothly. We stepped into a stairwell that smelled of concrete and dust. We climbed, our footsteps soft. At the top was another steel door, this one with a simple latch. I cracked it open and felt cold air rush in, carrying the smell of rain. The roof was flat and covered in white membrane with gravel along the edges. HVAC units sat in rows, big metal boxes with fans and ductwork. The sky was a uniform gray and the wind had a bite. From the roof edge, we could see the parking lot. it was worse than I'd hoped. Cars were scattered everywhere, doors open. People moved between them, some running in a normal way, heads turning, looking for routes. Others moved wrong, jerky and relentless, drawn toward motion. Near the main entrance, I saw at least 5 of the infected, clustering around the broken door, hitting it, pulling at the frame, drawn by the noise inside. Behind them, in the lot, more were drifting in from the tree line and from the ramp area, like the rest stop was a magnet. And then, farther out, near the highway ramp, I saw something that made my stomach go cold. A group of survivors, real survivors moving with caution, were walking toward the rest area. They had backpacks. One carried a long hunting rifle slung across his chest. Another pushed a luggage cart loaded with supplies. They were scanning the lot, talking with hand signals sticking close together. They weren't rushing in like panicked evacuees. They looked like people who had already made choices. Daryl saw them too. "Finally," he said, voice full of relief. "Help." I grabbed his sleeve hard. "No," I hissed. He jerked back. "What?" "Look at how they're moving," I said. "They're not coming here to join a group. They're coming here because it's a known resource point. Food, water, shelter, they're coming to take what they can." Eli whispered, "Do we signal them?" I watched the group approach the lot's edge. One of them pointed toward the building. Another pointed toward the infected clustered at the entrance. They paused, and I saw them discuss something, their heads close. They weren't stupid. They weren't blind. They were evaluating. And then the man with the rifle lifted it, not aiming at the infected, not yet, but holding it in a way that said he wanted everyone around him to know he had it. Daryl's voice was low. "If they have a rifle, they can clear the entrance. And then they have the building," I said. The wind cut across the roof and the world below looked like a board game that had tipped over, pieces scattered, rules broken. The rest area was a crossroads. Everyone knew it existed. And now, someone with a plan was walking right toward it. I backed away from the roof edge. "We go down," I said, "now, quietly." Daryl looked like he wanted to argue. Eli looked like he wanted to run. "We go down," I repeated, and this time my voice left no room for debate. "And we decide how we're going to hold ground when the next people arrive." Because the infected weren't the only threat. In a place everyone knows exists, the desperate don't just pass through. They come back. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.